All right, so today we're here with Professor Tom Stein, who is like a second father to me in many ways, and a tuba teacher, among other things, and a life mentor. So, Tom, what I'm doing, you are very aware of my project and my dissertation, and I'm basically just going through asking folks that commissioned works from Barbara a few questions. Some of them are very much the same. Some of them are kind of different, just depending on the piece. So I always ask this to everyone: how did you know Barbara York?
Well, like a lot of people, I knew Barbara York, even though she lived so close to us. She was what, a couple hours away by car, 3 hours away kind of stuff. And her work at Pitt State and stuff like that is just a couple hours away. But I actually got to know her by going to conferences and seeing her music essentially for sale, right? So some of her early work, the concerto, which I own, I bought way back when I first saw it. And this was, gosh, I don't know, man, a lot of years ago kind of stuff. So that's how it started. And then in an odd way, I became aware that she was kind of local to us a little bit. My students started playing her works. Like you, I had other students doing dissertation projects or lecture recitals around her works and stuff. And she started coming up. She accompanied some of my students, which was fabulous. So it just kind of grew that way over the years. And of course, you were the one that was probably had the most strongest personal relationship with her. And that just actually even increased that involvement even more at that time. So it kind of grew out just being aware of her music. And because she was close, we got more personal contact over the years.
Okay. So what was the commissioning process like, working with Barbara?
It was unlike any other commissioning process I ever did. It was kind of like commissioning a work from my sister. It's really kind of what it was like. So it started with my idea of having something done for my wife, Beth. And we're at a point in our life where we don't need stuff anymore. And so I was thinking, gosh, and my first thought was, wouldn't it be great to commission her work for her? And of course, the first name that popped in my mind was Barbara, who writes these beautiful, wonderful works, And so I contacted her one summer, the summer actually before the piece was actually written. And I said, Barbara, I got this great idea. Of course, all my ideas are great. But I said, I got this great idea, and this is what I'm thinking. She goes, oh, I'd love to do that. But she's commissioned with like a bass trombone concerto, an orchestra piece. I mean, she was just stuffed to the gills. And I said, great. So I'll just contact you in the future, when things ease off a little bit, And actually, I didn't contact her again. She contacted me about, I think it was August, of what, 2019 or something when this was written. And she said, oh, I have room now. Do you want to go ahead and do it? I go, yeah, So personally, we didn't do a contract. She said, oh, this is a price. I will immediately write the check, send it off to her. And that's, next thing I know, parts of pieces started to appear and poof, there it goes.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it says it was written in 2019.
Yeah.
So what month is Beth's birthday?
October.
October. Okay. Okay. All right. Good to know. Yeah. Okay. So with a lot of the commissioners, I talk about it like every time I say commissioners, I think of NFL, that stuff that Topher does with the fake football, fantasy football. So a lot of the commissioners would write, Barbara would be like, I need you to write me a letter. Or, Brian Dowdy used to call her the death composer because most of her pieces were about death. You are one of the only ones that I think there's maybe 4 that weren't about an object like a painting or dying. So there was 3 Romances for Susie. Mike Lynch commissioned that. The For the Children with the Japanese tubist, and then you, and there's one other that it's not popping in my head. So did Barbara ask?
My guess would be Child's Play. I don't know if that's the. Oh, that
Yeah,
was for euphonium though. But
yeah.
yeah.
Um, eh, so did Barbara have you write a letter? Because I know what she said about it. I just kind of want to know, what did you give Barbara? What did she ask for?
Yes. So she asked the letter, which of course I did it in an email. And she wanted me to write about Beth, write about, if I can give her information what she likes, things that are unique about her, special about her, and, how I felt about her, how did we meet, all that kind of stuff. So I gave her a story of how we met, which was kind of a convoluted story. And I told her stories of Beth. And so it was a kind of a lengthy email to it that I did send to her, for her to write that. So absolutely.
Okay, good to know. What was Beth's response whenever she heard it?
Well, she had no idea this was happening, right? So, what, as you know, I like to do multiple recitals in a year, So for me to do a recital, at the end of August and one at, the end of October was not unusual at all. And I had to apologize to her because I said, I scheduling this recital, and it was, like the night before her birthday. And I said, like, I'm so sorry, it was the only date I could get, which it wasn't. Actually, I tried to get one on her birthday. But so, I told her about that and just apologized and stuff. So when she showed up for the recital, she had no idea that it was on the recital. As a matter of fact, even the name of the piece did not even appear on the program. It was blank where it was to be, because I didn't want her to know about that. So the first she knew about it is when I stood up to talk about it, which was a festival of emotion and barely being able to get through the talk, let alone play the piece. And stuff. So she was, of course, from the onset all the way through, just in tears. So yeah, she thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Nice.
Oh, by the way, Barbara was there, and she loved Barbara. She thought Barbara was the sweetest woman in the world. In fact, I couldn't even talk to her after the performance because she sat down with Barbara when we had some cake and stuff. And all she did was talk to Barbara the whole night and stuff like that. So those two hit it off fabulously. And her death really, really hurt, Beth, because that was, neat, a nice time for her and someone important.
Was Ellen the accompanist?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Do you have any advice for a tuba player that's going to tackle this piece?
It's really straight ahead. It's a little confusing, I think. So the piece is called For Beth, My One and Only. Barbara wanted to call it only For Beth. And because it was for her birthday, I wanted to have my one and only on there. So she very nicely tacked that on there for me. And the beginning of the piece, that rhythm is For Beth. That's how she started the piece, was a rhythm of For Beth. And it moves really nicely, and I think it's really straight ahead as far as your heart will take you almost anywhere you need to on it. One of the things that she did in writing the piece was this actually kind of deals with as much how Beth and I met, because there's an agitated section after the opening kind of page and stuff. And that agitated section was, well, I met Beth online at first. And at the time, we never quite got together because I just had started seeing someone and she just had started seeing someone. And so we never met. And so, but for the next 4 years, because for both of us, that relationship didn't work out. But for the next 4 years, I kept emailing her periodically every couple of months saying, how you doing? What's going on? And just, kind of hoping one day she would, say, oh, well, I'm alone and nothing's going on. And so there was this constant thing where I was just always emailing with her. I met her once for lunch, which was a mistake because she's beautiful and sweet and brilliant and all and that was bad because it ruined for any other relationship I was going to try to have at that point. So there was this agitation of like, am I ever going to, be able to get with this woman and stuff like that? Well, sure enough, 4 years later, actually was just before Valentine's Day, I emailed her saying, yeah, I just seen how you're doing. And she goes, oh, I'm sorry, I can't talk much right now because she's just getting out of this relationship and she's just trying to get everything settled. And I was like, yes, thank God. So this agitato section is supposed to indicate sort of this constant searching and trying to, make it work. Then, oddly enough, there's a cadenza, which I've never had in a standalone, essentially very lyric piece before. And for me, it's kind of like, yeah, it's sort of that moment. It's kind of very triumphant sounding, to do that. And then it goes back to the open material. So my suggestion for them to be is just enjoy the piece and enjoy those aspects of it. And I think it just kind of works really beautifully. It's a nice, just lovely, sweet, engaging work that I think almost it can be played on the big tuba as well as the small tuba. It does go up to a G flat, but that's just for a moment. But if you like it, I say play it. It's just really nice.
Yeah. Something that is somewhat unusual about her writing is she normally doesn't go over like a minor sixth or a major skips in her leaps. There's actually, like at C, it's octaves, and that's something that she didn't do very often. So whenever I was looking this over, I've never heard it. We've talked about that, and it's hard for me to I can't hear it in my head. And then the agitato, the pio agitato section, I was kind of wondering, because she told me not all of that, but she told me that he waited for her a long time, and I was like, yeah, I don't know how the hell he landed her, but
now you know.
Yeah. So it's a sweet story. So you guys met online. That's how Topher and I met. What service was that through?
It's a service that's no longer in existence, matchmaker.com. At least I don't think it's around anymore. And at the time there was that in match.com, and Matchmaker was, I think, considered more of the not just hooking up kind of the site. It seemed to be that way kind of stuff. So yeah, and actually she was one of the people I met on there. And like I say, it was just unfortunate it worked out time-wise like it did, but maybe not. Maybe it was meant to be that way. But it was it was truly a 4-year long quest
Yeah.
to go.
Yeah. Okay.
We've been together now for 18 years, by the way. So
yeah, good. How long? So you met her. You guys were both in relationships. You had to wait for her, and then you started dating, I'm assuming, and then you got married. Yeah. How long have you guys been married?
We've been together. Well, I say we've been together 18 years. So we've been married for 15 years, and we're together for 3 years before that. So yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I've got 2 more questions. Oh, okay. Something that I was going to say. So I did the ITEA standard literature rating on this. And it's actually one of her hardest ones just because of the leaps and the range.
Yeah, and I think, the leaps, even though there's some that are like in that octave range, like you're saying, they're G's kind of stuff is generally in there. It's still in a comfortable kind of a zone for either a small tuba or a big tuba. But I would say the one in the cadenza that goes up to the G flat is probably the more awkward interval in there, to do that. But once you get it in your ear, it works pretty well. I don't think she would have had any problem with something like that being taken down an octave, or, so, to be honest with you, I think, my recollection of her was she's always very happy to have her literature played to do that. But I think anyone, I think obviously if you're handling the Vaughan Williams concerto, if you're handling the Gregson concerto, this piece is very much, within that same kind of range stuff to do that.
Yeah. So the rating system, it goes up to 100, and I think it rated right around 79, 80 somewhere.
Yeah. And I would say, except for a couple areas, the rating, which I think, by the way, is brilliant. The people that worked on that, I think, did a great job with that. But I think that also it does give you an idea. But the range for the G flat, the predominant range is going to be around C's, D's. That middle C, D area, which is not killer, and things like that. So except for a couple of things, I think it's more accessible than the actual listing of the range might work for that.
Yes, and that's something for people that might be watching this, that she did not want to write ball busting pieces all the time, because she was like, who the hell's going to play them besides the world's top players, so she did not write like Roland Spinsolli, which there's totally a place for that in our literature, and there's a need for it. But um, Pittsburgh State University undergraduates are not going to be playing that. So, it's accessible. Let's just say that.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so you teach at UMKC.
I do.
Which is kind of, in my opinion, a beacon for new music. You guys have Chin Yi, you have So Long. I can't remember the other guy's name, the one that did the Cactus.
Paul Rudy.
Paul Rudy. And I think there might be a few more.
Yep.
But, I know that you are a huge proponent for new music. Professor Davis is, and I know that many of the other faculty are. So in your opinion, what is the importance of commissioning new music, especially for the tuba? And what advice do you have for a young musician or maybe an old musician who is looking to have someone commission a piece for them?
Two things. The commissioning is very good, obviously, just the literature side, getting new pieces in our literature. And then it's really good for the performer and a composer if they're working together. If they get to know each other, the composer can learn more about tubas, the tuba player can learn more about the composition side of it, and it can be a really neat, almost collaborative kind of a thing in the creation of music, not just when it's played. So for me, I think it's critical. And we are getting into a spot in the tuba world where when I was in college, you could play pretty much the real literature, the good literature that was out there. There just wasn't that much of it. We are now in a time that even though I like to do about 4 recitals in a year, there's no way I can keep up with the good literature that's being written out there. I can't even come close anymore. And that is actually really, really cool, because what it does is make all of us then have to listen and decide, and the listening is important, and that growth of music. And so also I get to hear these works because my students get to play some of the works I will never have time to play. But there's also the nice thing that when new works come out, we talk about now about you can listen to the Roland Spinsolli recording, and now I can listen to the David Zirkel recording of that same work, and like a pianist, we get to hear different interpretations, which is really important to go for it. So for me, it's a lot of things to do that, and it's all about having options, having choices, finding things that touch you, finding things that challenge you. A lot of my students like to play the really gorgeous lyric things. Some like to play the really, really intense, very, very contemporary things. I like to do both. But as you know, if you don't like to do the really wild contemporary things, I make students do the really wild contemporary things. So they have that experience and stuff to do that. So it's just so nice that we can, the experience is important. So for me, it's partly, this was important. This piece was important to me because it was a piece I had created. It was for my wife. I got to play it for my wife. And I hope other people play it and enjoy it. But for me, it was that experience of it that was critically important. So everyone can have a unique, individual, special experience with that relationship on what comes out of it. And that to me is the most important one. The making of it, the collaboration of it, the creation of it, what it's for, and that special performance for it is what makes it so cool to do that.
Yeah. So I'm sure that you've probably had close friends commission pieces, and maybe even people that you just don't really know. Is there a difference in working with that kind of a spectrum with someone that, like you said, Barbara, you're pretty close to Barbara, you were. Have you ever commissioned a piece from someone that you just didn't know at all?
Well, yeah, sometimes. So we were on in the commission of the new double concerto by Tony Ploeg kind of stuff. Well, I know Tony, and he's been here at UMKC, and I played his 3 miniatures with our one ensemble when we did the Ploeg concert here and stuff like that. I love Tony. He's a great guy and a funny guy, and a very good teacher and stuff. But I really didn't know Tony like I know some people to do that. So that was more of joining a project that's already in existence, because I know Tony's writing and Tony's worth and that kind of stuff, you know, to work with that. I also was involved in the commissioning for the, oh gosh, it was a concerto, the Dana, I can't remember the last name. Dana, I'm going to lose it. Anyways, so I have been involved in a lot throughout all that stuff. And so in a way, there is what I call the impersonal one, where you may be joining a crew of people, maybe a small number, like 5, 6, 7, 8 people kind of stuff. So that is more the enjoyment of having that person writing it, and you're part of a commission doing a work, like from maybe a big composer or, you know, something like that. I did prefer the one I did with Barbara. That to me was the coolest one because of that involvement. So if you can be involved with a composer, if you can get to know a composer to do that, that is a really neat kind of commissioning thing to do that. So when my students write stuff for me, that is really super cool, you know, to do, because there's that connection. And I think that's the neat part of commissioning in my book, in that side of it.
Okay. All right, so I have one more question about Barbara. I have asked everyone this. I asked Barbara, I've asked myself, I've asked Dr. Gail Robertson, Dr. Travis Scott, and all of the commissioners. So I'm gonna ask you, what is Barbara York's legacy?
I think Barbara York's legacy is again about twofold. People in the tuba world, we know her as a composer, right? And so the legacy in that side is again a connection, because all of her music is connected to something, an event, a person. If it's not the actual performer, it's someone the performer knows, you know, that kind of stuff to do that. And so for Barbara, it's that her legacy has that raw connection to the performer and other people, and that music has a connection with that. So her music has strong emotions, it has strong stories behind it. And so her legacy is really, you know, bringing forth a part of our literature that wouldn't be vacant without her, but certainly wouldn't sparkle as much as it does now. People wouldn't, I mean, all my students are in their recitals this year are playing a piece by Barbara York, you know, partly in remembrance of her, but also because she just writes wonderful music. She was also a very good teacher. You know, so when she would work with my students, and she would accompany my students, and they would work with her for lecture recitals and for dissertation projects and stuff. It wasn't just working about her music. She actually worked with them. It was a lesson. It was a teaching. It was an experience to do that. So that's where I think Barbara comes into play, with probably at the same point being one of the most unassuming and unegotistical and just solely caring about other people, which you can see that in her music. Everything she did was not about herself and what's going on, about giving back to do that. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it's, you know, it's your answer.
Yeah, but you know how I go off in wild tangents all the time.
Yeah. I would add to that, something that I've gotten from almost every single person, and was obviously my own personal experience, was how willing Barbara was to give her time, write a novel through Facebook Messenger, drunk dial you at all times of the day, just talk about something, you know, and that was so nice to just have access to what the hell was going on inside this lady's head when she wrote that. So all of the pieces that I've played, some of them that I haven't, I know the stories that y'all won't know, because she gave me that time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there's probably dozens, if not hundreds, of folks out there, because something that if you go back and look at her tribute page on Facebook, or I guess her Facebook profile, there are people that just talk about that she gave her time and her energy to just, and that was really beautiful.
I'm glad that other people experienced that, because I never know if that was because we knew each other and she was close to us. To know that that was something that she gave to everyone is, and it sounds like Barbara, you know, it doesn't surprise me, but it's really nice to hear that that's what people are getting out of that.
Yeah,